The emergency fund advice you've been following your whole life is quietly working against you. You've been told to save 3 to 6 months of expenses, park it in a savings account, and never touch it. Sounds solid, right? But here's the truth, that advice was built for a world that no longer exists, and following it today could leave you financially exposed exactly when you need protection the most. Let's start with where this advice actually came from. The 3 to 6 month rule was popularized decades ago when jobs were stable, inflation was predictable, and a savings account actually earned you meaningful interest. People worked at the same company for 30 years, costs didn't spike overnight, and the economy moved slowly enough that this buffer made sense. But look around you right now. Inflation has changed how far your money goes. Job markets have shifted dramatically. Layoffs happen without warning. Freelancing and gig work have replaced traditional employment for millions of people. The financial landscape your parents navigated is simply not the one you are living in today. Here's what makes this even more dangerous. Most people feel safe because they have an emergency fund sitting in their account. That false sense of security stops them from asking the harder question, is this fund actually designed to protect me, or is it just money sitting there doing almost nothing while real risks build up around me? That's exactly what this video is going to answer. We are going to break down why the old model is broken, what the modern version looks like, and how you can rebuild your emergency fund into something that actually works for your real life in the world we are living in right now. The 3 to 6 month rule sounds logical on the surface, but when you actually break it down, you start to see how many assumptions it makes about your life that simply are not true anymore. This rule assumes you have a steady paycheck coming in every single month. It assumes your expenses are predictable and consistent. It assumes that if you lose your job, you will find another one within 3 to 6 months without any major complications. Every single one of those assumptions is shakier today than it has ever been before. Think about what 3 to 6 months of savings actually means in real numbers. If your monthly expenses are $3,000, you are supposed to have between $9,000 and $18,000 sitting in a low-interest savings account. That money is not growing. It is not working for you. It is just sitting there, and inflation is quietly eating away at its real value every single month it stays untouched. Now let's talk about the people this rule completely fails. Freelancers, contractors, and self-employed individuals have income that fluctuates wildly from month to month. For them, 3 months of savings can disappear in a single bad quarter. A traditional employee might survive 6 months of job searching, but a freelancer dealing with a dry spell, a lost client, or an industry slowdown faces a completely different kind of financial pressure. And then there is the healthcare variable that most emergency fund advice completely ignores. One unexpected medical event, one hospital visit, one serious diagnosis can blow through 3 to 6 months of savings before you even get back on your feet. The old rule was never designed to absorb that kind of shock, and yet millions of people are relying on it like it can. The biggest problem with the old rule is not the number itself. It is that it treats your emergency fund as a one-size-fits-all solution when your financial life is completely unique to you. Your income type, your job security, your health risks, your family situation, none of that is accounted for in a rule that was written for a workforce that no longer exists. Most people think having an outdated emergency fund is just a minor financial inefficiency. The reality is much harsher than that. Following the wrong system does not just leave you underprepared, it actively costs you money, opportunity, and peace of mind every single day. Let's talk about inflation first because this is the silent killer of emergency funds that nobody warns you about. If your savings account is earning 1% interest and inflation is running at 4 to 5%, you are losing 3 to 4% of your purchasing power every single year. That means your $18,000 emergency fund is functionally worth less money each year even though the number in your account stays the same. Here is a concrete way to think about it. Imagine you built your emergency fund 5 years ago based on your expenses at that time. Your rent, groceries, utilities, and transportation have all gone up since then, but your emergency fund has not kept pace. You think you have 6 months of coverage, but when you actually run the numbers against your current expenses, you might only have 4 months. That gap is invisible until the moment you actually need it. There is also the opportunity cost that people never calculate. Money sitting in a traditional savings account earning almost nothing is money that could be working harder in other places. A high-yield savings account, a money market account, or a treasury bill ladder can give you the same liquidity and safety while generating 2 to 4 times more return. Every month you leave money in the wrong place is a month of returns you will never get back. Then there is the psychological cost, which is just as real as the financial one. When people build their emergency fund using the old rules and feel like they are covered, they stop thinking critically about their financial safety net. That comfort zone becomes dangerous. They stop adjusting for life changes like a new baby, a career shift, or rising fixed costs because they believe the box is already checked. The truth is that an outdated emergency fund does not just fail you in a crisis. It fails you quietly every single month before the crisis ever arrives. And by the time you realize the gap, you are already in the middle of the emergency with less protection than you thought you had. Now that you understand why the old system is broken, let's talk about what actually works. The modern emergency fund is not just a bigger pile of cash sitting in the same old savings account. It is a completely different way of thinking about financial protection that is built around your actual life, not a generic rule. The first shift you need to make is moving from a time-based target to an expense-based target. Instead of asking yourself how many months of savings you have, start asking how many months of your actual necessary expenses you can cover. There is a big difference between your total monthly spending and your bare minimum survival expenses. Your emergency fund should be built around the second number, not the first. Here is how you calculate your real emergency number. Sit down and list only your non-negotiable monthly expenses. This means rent or mortgage, utilities, basic groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, and transportation to work. Strip out everything else. No subscriptions, no dining out, no entertainment. That lean number is your true monthly emergency baseline, and that is what your fund should be protecting. Once you have that number, the next step is figuring out your personal risk multiplier. This is where the modern framework separates itself from the old one-size-fits-all rule. If you are a salaried employee in a stable industry with strong job security, 3 to 4 months of your baseline expenses might genuinely be enough. But if you are a freelancer, a contractor, a commission-based earner, or someone in a volatile industry, you need to be thinking closer to 8 to 12 months minimum. The modern framework also introduces something the old rule never considered, the layered emergency fund. Instead of keeping all your emergency money in one place, you split it into 2 distinct layers. The first layer is your immediate access fund, roughly 1 to 2 months of expenses kept in a high-yield savings account that you can reach within 24 hours. The second layer is your extended reserve, the remaining months kept in slightly less liquid but higher-yielding instruments like treasury bills or money market funds. This layered approach solves 2 problems at once. It keeps enough cash instantly accessible for true emergencies while making the rest of your money work harder instead of sitting idle. You get the security of the old system with the efficiency that modern financial tools actually make possible. Building the right amount is only half the battle. Where you keep your emergency fund matters just as much as how much you save. The wrong location can silently drain your fund's value or leave you unable to access it exactly when you need it most. Let's start with what most people are doing wrong. The majority of people keep their entire emergency fund in a traditional checking or savings account at a big bank earning somewhere between 0.01 and 0.5% interest. That is essentially nothing. You are letting thousands of dollars sit completely idle while better options are sitting right in front of you. The first and most accessible upgrade is a high-yield savings account. These are offered by online banks and credit unions, and they currently offer anywhere between 4 and 5% annual interest on your money. Your funds remain completely liquid, fully insured, and accessible within 1 to 2 business days. There is absolutely no reason to keep your emergency money in a regular savings account when this option exists. The second option for your extended reserve layer is treasury bills. These are short-term government-backed securities that currently offer competitive returns and are considered one of the safest financial instruments on the planet. You can buy them directly through Treasury Direct with terms as short as 4 weeks, which means your money is never locked away for too long while still earning far more than a traditional savings account. The third option worth knowing about is a money market fund through a brokerage account. These funds invest in short-term, low-risk instruments and offer returns comparable to high-yield savings accounts with the added benefit of being connected to your investment accounts for easy management. The one place you should never keep your emergency fund is the stock market. Investments tied to market performance can drop 30 to 40% right at the moment a recession hits, which is also likely the same moment you lose your job and actually need that money. Knowing what to do is important, but knowing what not to do is equally critical. Most people make the same recurring mistakes with their emergency funds, and these mistakes quietly destroy the protection they think they have built. The first mistake is treating your emergency fund like a general-purpose savings account. An emergency fund has one job: to protect you during a genuine crisis. The moment you start dipping into it for vacations, car upgrades, or home renovations, you are dismantling your own safety net one withdrawal at a time. These are not emergencies, they are expenses that need their own dedicated savings bucket. The second mistake is building your fund once and never reviewing it again. Your life changes constantly. You might get married, have a child, take on a mortgage, switch careers, or move to a more expensive city. Every one of these changes affects how much coverage you actually need, and your emergency fund needs to be updated to reflect your current life, not the life you had 3 years ago. The third mistake is keeping your emergency fund too accessible. This sounds counterintuitive, but hear it out. When your emergency money is sitting in the same account you use for daily spending, the psychological barrier to using it disappears. Keeping it in a separate account, ideally at a different bank, creates just enough friction to stop you from making impulsive withdrawals that you will regret later. The fourth mistake is not accounting for inflation adjustments. Every year your cost of living goes up, your emergency fund target should go up with it. Most people set a number, hit it, and never touch it again. But if inflation runs at 4% annually, a fund that was perfect 2 years ago is already noticeably underpowered today. One of the biggest reasons people never build a proper emergency fund is because the target number feels impossibly large. Looking at a goal of $10,000 or $15,000 when you are starting from zero can feel so overwhelming that you never even begin. The solution is not to lower your standards, it is to completely change how you approach the building process. The first thing you need to accept is that your emergency fund does not need to be perfect on day one. A partially built emergency fund is infinitely better than no emergency fund at all. Even 1 month of baseline expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account gives you a meaningful buffer that most people do not have. Start small, start now, and build consistently rather than waiting until you can do it perfectly. The most effective method for building your fund quickly is automating the process completely. Set up an automatic transfer on the same day your paycheck lands, before you have any chance to spend that money elsewhere. Even transferring $50 or $100 per paycheck adds up faster than most people expect. When saving happens automatically, it stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like a fixed expense you never think about. Another powerful strategy is using income windfalls aggressively. Tax refunds, work bonuses, freelance payments, and cash gifts are all opportunities to make dramatic jumps toward your target. Most people treat windfalls as fun money. High financial performers treat them as emergency fund fuel. A single tax refund of $2,000 could cover 2 full months of your baseline expenses in one move. You should also look hard at your current expenses for a temporary spending fast. Pick 1 or 2 non-essential categories, dining out, subscriptions, entertainment, and pause them for 60 to 90 days. Channel every dollar you free up directly into your emergency fund. This is not a permanent lifestyle change, it is a short-term sprint to get your foundation built as quickly as possible. The final piece is celebrating your milestones along the way. When you hit your first month of coverage, acknowledge it. When you hit 3 months, recognize that achievement. Breaking your total target into smaller milestones keeps the goal feeling reachable and gives your brain the positive reinforcement it needs to stay consistent through the entire process. Most people either never reach their emergency fund target because it feels too far away, or they hit a number and stop without ever checking if that number is actually right for their situation. Knowing when your fund is truly enough is a skill that most personal finance content completely skips over. The clearest signal that your fund is sufficient is when it covers your real baseline expenses for the right number of months based on your personal risk profile. If you did the exercise from Part 4 and calculated your lean monthly number and your risk multiplier, your fund is enough when those two numbers multiplied together are sitting safely in your account and growing with inflation every year. A practical check you should run every 6 months is what financial planners call the job loss test. Ask yourself this question honestly: if I lost all my income tomorrow, how many months could I survive on what I have right now without touching any investments or going into debt? If your honest answer matches your target range, your fund is where it needs to be. If it does not, you have a gap that needs addressing. Another way to measure sufficiency is by stress testing your fund against your 3 most likely emergencies. For most people these are job loss, a major medical expense, and a critical home or car repair. Run the actual numbers for each scenario and check whether your current fund could absorb any one of them without completely wiping you out. If a single emergency would drain your fund to zero, you are not yet at true sufficiency. The last and most important signal is psychological. A truly sufficient emergency fund should make you feel genuinely calm, not just theoretically covered. If you still feel anxious about money despite having savings, that anxiety is data. It is telling you that either your fund is not large enough for your personal risk tolerance, or it is sitting in the wrong place where you do not fully trust its accessibility. Building your emergency fund is an achievement, but the work does not stop there. An emergency fund that is never maintained slowly becomes just as ineffective as having no fund at all. The best financial safety nets are living systems that grow and adapt alongside your real life. The most important maintenance habit is an annual emergency fund review. Once a year, sit down and recalculate your baseline monthly expenses from scratch. Do not assume your old number is still accurate. Rent increases, new insurance premiums, a growing family, or a career change can all shift your baseline significantly without you even noticing until something goes wrong. The second habit is rate shopping your savings vehicle every 6 to 12 months. High-yield savings account rates change constantly based on federal interest rate decisions. The account giving you the best return today might not be the best option a year from now. Spending 30 minutes comparing current rates once or twice a year can meaningfully increase what your emergency fund earns without any additional effort on your part. If you ever have to use your emergency fund, treat replenishing it as your single most important financial priority until it is fully restored. Do not restart your investment contributions, do not plan a vacation, do not make any large discretionary purchases until your safety net is back to its full target. The moment after using your emergency fund is when you are most financially vulnerable, and speed of recovery matters enormously. The final habit is increasing your target deliberately as your income grows. As you earn more, your lifestyle naturally adjusts upward. Your emergency fund target should follow that growth intentionally rather than staying frozen at a number you set years ago. You came into this video thinking you had your emergency fund figured out. Hopefully now you can see that most people are not behind because they are bad with money, they are behind because they were given outdated advice and never told there was a better way. The modern emergency fund is not complicated. It is built around your actual baseline expenses, sized according to your personal risk profile, stored in the right high-yield instruments, layered for both accessibility and growth, and reviewed regularly so it never falls behind your real life. You do not need to fix everything overnight. Start with one step today. Open a high-yield savings account if you do not already have one. Calculate your real baseline monthly expenses. Run the job loss test and find out honestly where you actually stand. One honest look at your current situation is worth more than months of vague financial anxiety. The people who build real financial security are not the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who build systems that protect them quietly in the background while they focus on living their lives. Your emergency fund is the foundation of that entire system, and getting it right changes everything that sits on top of it. If this video gave you even one thing you are going to act on, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Most people in your life are running on the same outdated advice you started this video with. A single share could genuinely change how someone close to you handles their financial safety net. And if you want to go deeper on building real financial security from the ground up, subscribe and turn on notifications because this is exactly the kind of content we are going to keep bringing you every single